Hi everyone, welcome to the Toronto Centre Federal Election Candidates Meeting. We want to thank you all so much for coming out today to hear some amazing words for the candidates here in Toronto Centre. Just before we get started today, I'd like to introduce ourselves as your moderators for the day. My name is Humaira Rahman. I am co-owner of Carousel Cafe, who did some of the food today, so if you enjoyed some of your sweet treats, that was us. And then I'd like to pass it to my co-moderator.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anushin Salvasegar. I'm a resident of St. Jamestown for all 21 years of my life, and I'm also a volunteer as well. So I'm very happy to be here to represent my community, because after all, we are part of Toronto Centre as well. We'd like to... We'd like to acknowledge the land that we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge that all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants either in this generation or generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent.
And again, thank you all so much for coming out today. Maybe what we could get started with is introducing who the candidates are joining us today. So today we have Evan Soloman from the Liberal Party. We have Samatha Green here. Thank you. We have Samatha Green from the NDP. And we have Olivia Ihem from the Green Party. So unfortunately, Luis Ibarra is not here joining us today. He sends his regrets. But today we will have a bunch of questions. We are all here today to really get to know our candidates here with us. I'd like to pass the floor over to Joel. Joel, if you're here, do you want to introduce the Community Civic Engagement Collaboration?
Hello. Again, my name is Joel Clausen. I'm a community development specialist with Yonge Street Mission and one of the members of the Community Civic Engagement Collaborative. We've come together over many election campaigns to do voter engagement, education about the voting process, as well as these all candidates meeting events. And so we're a network of agencies and businesses, as well as residents and grassroots groups from around the community. There's many people that are part of it, and I don't think I could give a full list, if you look at our poster, we have all the sponsors along the bottom of the poster show you who's been contributed to organizing this. And maybe I will especially note that Focus Media Arts gives a lot of support for these events through doing filming. And after the event, this will be online. It will be available online for you. And if you know of anybody who would like to be able to watch a recording, it'll be available. And so that's another way for us to get the word out. That's a word about us, about who the organizers are.
Thank you, Joel. And before we get started, just a little bit about this building for some of the folks who are new here today. You are located in the Daniel Spectrum in the community living room. And for anyone throughout the night, if you need to head to the bathrooms are over here on my left, over here. It's okay, you don't need to move. Okay, and if for anyone needing to exit, if you could just please exit or enter through this side as well. We just closed up our, right behind me, thank you Adonis, right behind me. We locked up the exits on Dundas just to make sure that we all are able to really hear our candidates, hear how they answer the questions, hear our residents. Thank you all so much for coming out. We wanted to make sure that this space was safe for all of us today. And yeah, we want to give a huge shout out to Regent Park Focus Media Arts for filming here today. You'll be able to catch this on Regent Park TV, so huge shout out to Adonis and his team for always recording these lovely events for those folks who weren't able to make it with us today. Okay.
So we'd like to just go over some quick voter instructions. If you're not aware, Election Day is on April 28th. You will go to the polling station associated with your postal code. You may have received a card in the mail instructing you where to vote. If not, you can go to elections.ca, that's elections.ca website, and insert your postal code to learn where to vote. Bring identification. Also on the elections.ca website is information on what identification is needed and how you can vote if you don't have any.
Okay, so now the reason why we are all here today is to hear from our candidates. I just want to walk everyone through the agenda for the night and walk you all through the process of what will be going on throughout our time here. We're going to first get started with the opening statements from our candidates. So we will hear from each one of them. They will introduce themselves, a little bit about what they believe in and all that stuff. After we complete the opening statements, me and my moderator, we're going to get started with a couple of questions. So we have some questions ready for them, and we're going to put them on the hot seat before we open up the floor for you all. So that's when we open up the floor for the residents here today, the folks who joined us here today. But in addition to the folks in person, we also have a few folks joining us online. So we have another moderator, Fazla, online. And for anyone who is on the cell phone wanting to join in, there is the Zoom link, or you can call in and ask your questions online as well. So we have those two open areas for residents to really hone in and ask their questions. When asking questions, we are going to ask that you all ask your questions. You have 30 seconds to ask your questions. We want to make sure that everyone is heard. We have equal opportunity for everyone to ask their questions. And then as well as for the candidates, we want to make sure they have fair response time to answer the questions as well.
And we'd like to just quickly go over the code of conduct. So the Community Civic Engagement Collaborative is dedicated to hosting a harassment-free and safe event for everyone, regardless of race, religion, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, age, physical appearance, and so on. We want to remind everyone that we want everyone to engage in active listening. We encourage everyone to just suspend their judgment. Please do not boo the candidates, whether you agree or disagree with them. If poor behavior is displayed, moderators will issue a warning. And if this happens again, the participant will be removed from the event. For online participants, we encourage you all to remain mute throughout the event, and if you aren't, we reserve the right to mute you. Typing anything offensive or any sort of abusive language within the online chat will be moderated, and participants acting in any sort of abusive way will be removed from the meeting. Please do not display any anti-party slogans or placards of offensive nature within your display screen. And please put questions in the chat and start your questions with an asterisk, the star button using Shift-8. If your question is selected, you will be called upon to unmute. You will have 30 seconds to answer your question. The CCEC team will be monitoring the chat and are hoping to have an issue-free event, and we appreciate your participation.
Okay, and before we get started, I just want to go over the order of speaking. So we are going to have the candidates speak on a rotating basis. So first we will have Samatha Green, then we'll have Olivia Ihem, then we'll have Evan Soloman, okay? And then we'll rotate through them so that everyone has equal opportunity to start and finish, okay? So maybe we could get started with our introductions. So take it away.
All right, I drew the long straw. Thank you so much for having us here today. It's such a delight to be in such a beautiful space with such a beautiful crowd. So my name is Dr. Samatha Green. I'm a family physician right over there. That's my office, here at the Sumac Creek Health Center, where I've worked for 11 years. And I live in the community with my family, who is also right here, sitting in front. And I decided to run for office because I am tired of my patients and my neighbors having poor health outcomes as a result of bad political decisions. Sometime last year, a patient of mine was hospitalized for her asthma, and she was discharged and came in to see me, and she showed me photos of the inside of her apartment. And the walls, the ceiling, they were just covered in black mold. So clearly, this absentee landlord had directly caused her hospitalization. And it's bad policy that leads to so many bad health and well-being outcomes. And that's why I'm running for the NDP, because we're serious about tackling the housing crisis by deeply addressing affordable housing, by ensuring that the provinces implement rent control. We are also deeply serious about addressing affordability and ensuring that everyday people can afford the cost of living, afford groceries, afford what they need to support their families. And I'm also running because I am worried about the climate crisis. Climate change is the biggest health threat that we face, and only the NDP is really serious about tackling it. Mark Carney is out there talking about building a new pipeline, and this is completely unacceptable. We need to invest and transform our economy, and in doing so, we're going to create jobs. We're also going to solve other issues like affordability, like unemployment. We'll also tackle the housing crisis by really transforming our economy, by building new transit, by investing in home retrofits, and we're going to also, address health outcomes as well. So thank you so much again for having me here. I think as someone who lives and works in this community, I'll make an excellent representative.
All right, can everybody hear me? Yes, perfect. My name is Olivia Ihem. I am a Cabbagetown resident, so I just live just up the street off of Parliament. I've lived there for some years, and I frequent Regent Park. I actually attend this community center as my place of workout all of the time, so you might see me there or walking around the neighborhood. But I am a young environmental scientist. I've been an environmental scientist for about a decade now. I've worked in public, private, and academic institutions. I've worked with the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change, as well as for the University of Toronto and for private industries, helping to remediate the oil sand tailings ponds. So you could say that my huge focus and passion is environmental science and restoration, ecological restoration to be exact, which is why I joined the Green Party, because they are really stewards when it comes to environmental restoration and tackling our climate crisis, which is here and now affecting us every single day. We're also stewards for affordable housing communities, making sure that everybody has the ability to have a roof over their head, and we're trying to work towards that right now. We're also stewards for affordable health care, making sure that everybody has access to it when they need it and when they want it as well. As a Black female in this community, I face this systemic racism every day when it comes to our Canadian institutions. So I'm not a stranger to how affordability looks for every different person in this community, especially minorities and Indigenous communities. So Indigenous leadership is one of our core values in the Green Party, and we're looking forward to working with Indigenous leaders.
Hi, everybody. I'm Evan Soloman. I'm the Liberal candidate here. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for putting this on. Good to see you. I want to thank, obviously, the fellow candidates. This is our second time together. It's been really good, robust debate, and mostly I want to thank all of you for coming, because this is what our democracy is all about. So let me just tell you a bit about who I am and why I'm running and what the plan is in this, the singularly most pivotal election of our lifetime, an election where Donald Trump is threatening our country and our services, and Pierre Poilievre is also threatening many of the same things. So we've got a really pivotal moment here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Toronto is where I was born and raised. It's my home. My parents were born here. My grandparents came here as immigrants, like so many people. My grandfather worked in a sweatshop at Queen and Yonge, at Stone Clothing, sewing pockets. He had 8 kids. My dad was the youngest of 8 and the first to go to university here. And his father, my grandfather, died when he was 53, when my dad was just turned 13. And my father said to my brother, who's here, and my sister, and who's here, look, your grandfather gave us all opportunity, the Canadian promise. And I'm giving it to you, and you'll give it to your children. But it comes with one promise. You've got to give that, make sure that every Canadian has that opportunity and has the opportunity to get a good education and access to health care and the same opportunities. So why I'm running is to fulfill part of that. But I know this community well. I actually met my wife here on Earl Street, where she lived. I worked here at Regent Park with Pathways to Education. I got to know many members of the community, and I'm already at time. And I will just say that as we talk about affordability and health care and the key issues in this debate, we'll outline the Liberal plan.
All right, so as moderators will now be giving the candidates our questions. So our first question is, systemic racism impacts people who are Black and Indigenous across the country. What is your party's strategy and implementation plan to increase inclusion? Included in this, how will your party encourage more people who are Black and Indigenous to become candidates and hold positions of power without fear of being discriminated against and or threatened with death?
Thank you for posing such an important and urgent question. This has been important for years. For many different types of people, they may feel the pressure, but as a Black woman, especially as a Black female candidate for the Green Party, I can promise you that this party is very supportive of minority races as well as genders and sexualities. And our promise is to make sure that the campaign trail is safe for everybody by instituting an anti-racism commissioner that has the ability to enact, as well as making sure that our Black and Indigenous youth have the proper safety and psychological needs addressed, especially if they're interpreting any harassment along the campaign trail. But overall, the Green Party is very inclusive, and we're here to make a change to that inclusivity platform. We're here to really reconstruct that table and change who can benefit from it and who can change it. So we're really here for our minorities as well as our youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a really, really important question, and one that obviously the Liberal Party, but as someone whose own family is mixed race, I feel these things very personally. Words are vitally important to stand up for inclusivity in all aspects of our society, but also action matters. And I just want to talk, first of all, about the anti-racism strategy started in 2024 that is over $110 million to make sure that Black Canadians have access, equal access in our healthcare system, in our justice system, and in every aspect of society. That's really important. The party has invested in a Black Canadians justice strategy as well, because we have an overrepresentation of Black Canadians and other Canadians in our prison system. We've got to stop that and fix that injustice. In terms of obviously the question asked about Indigenous Canadians, This is a really important issue. Obviously, the Liberal Party reaffirms the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People and fulfilling the 94 calls to action. But we have invested $4 billion in housing for Indigenous peoples. In our own riding here in Toronto Centre, this is housing is the most important issue, but specifically in the Indigenous community, we need to have greater support working with those community leaders, as we're doing.
Thank you. As a physician right here in Regent Park, I have many racialized patients, Black patients, Indigenous patients, and I've witnessed the way that hate and racism have a deep impact on people's health and well-being. I would say that the NDP, of course, also will implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which means we will not be building pipelines through Indigenous land without free, prior, and informed consent. We will also, of course, implement all of the TRC recommendations and the recommendations from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Commission. We also will ensure that there's clean drinking water on reserves across the country, and we will not sue Indigenous children to deny them dental care like the current government. So, the mic is cutting out, sorry. So we will, yeah. Can I yeah. Yes, of course, sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll use the red one. It's okay. So as I was saying, we will ensure there's clean drinking water on all reserves across the country, and we will not sue Indigenous children in court to deny them dental care. In addition, the NDP for a long time has been calling to an end to racial profiling and carding by the RCMP, which is ongoing, and in policing across the country. And we will implement the brand new Environmental Justice Act, which I was very excited to participate in its planning through my work at CAPE, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. So we will fully implement it, which means fully funding it. And in terms of getting elected representatives who are Black, Indigenous, and racialized, the NDP actually has a policy that incumbents who retire must be replaced by equity-deserving groups, which I don't see any other party doing, and I think it's an amazing policy that I'm proud of.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all of your answers. So my first question is actually a question about housing. So this is, I'm sure, a burning question for all of us and what we all want to know. Specifically when it comes to housing, and deeply affordable housing is a right and deep need in this riding and across the country. So in 2024, 100,000 households were on the waiting list for subsidized housing in Toronto. So that kind of equals to a 10 to 15-year wait time. What we want to know is, what is your party's plan, including funding to increase affordable and deeply affordable housing in Toronto Centre and across Canada? Specifically, what we want to know is, what will your party do to increase RGI housing across Toronto, and especially within phases 4 and 5 of Regent Park's revitalization?
Thank you for the question. This is by far the issue we hear most about. It's the most significant issue in the Liberal platform, which is housing and deeply affordable housing. The federal government's responsibility technically is not housing, but in our plan, we have a $25 billion fund called the Build Canada Homes, which will be an independent agency specifically designed not only to build homes, but with strings attached for affordable housing and RGI. There's $10 billion in the Support Affordable Home Builders, $10 billion for financing and building affordable housing, RGI, and shelters and other forms of housing. For even in our community here, where we have a lot of co-op housing, this government has put in $1.5 billion to the co-op to build more co-ops, which is the largest investment in 30 years. But this is building on top of what we've already done on our Housing Accelerator Fund to make sure that Toronto Centre has access to affordable housing to build 12,000 new homes, but we're also building homes, what we call social medicine. This is really important, and I know the rest of the candidates talk about this, which is housing is affected, health outcomes, food insecurity, and housing are interlinked. That's why the federal government has backed places like done a place with Dr. Andrew Bruzery, who works here.
Look, it's been 10 years of Liberal government, and the housing crisis has gotten a lot worse. Rent has doubled, and the price to own a home nationally has gone up 89%, and I'm sure it's much more here in Toronto Centre. I actually have a patient who works full-time for the City of Toronto as a recreation worker, and she was rent-evicted earlier this year. You know, her landlord decided to renovate, she was evicted, she could not find a place to live in Toronto. So she ended up in a women's shelter for several months. This is completely unacceptable in a city as wealthy as Toronto. The NDP has a plan to double the pace of home building, and the funding will be tied to certain restrictions. So the provinces who accept the funding will have to implement rent control. So Ontario will be forced to implement rent control. They also will be forced to crack down on bad landlord practices like rent eviction and dem eviction and fixed term leases. And the money will be specifically set aside to ensure that housing is 20% affordable and non-market like co-op. So the idea is that 20% of housing in any given neighborhood will be non-market. So the bulk of the money will really be going to this non-market housing. Meanwhile, the Liberals are giving tax breaks to corporations with no strings attached, no need necessarily for rent geared to income housing.
All right, thank you for your question. The Green Party is very aware of the housing crisis. Myself, I live in a co-op, so I'm very aware of how necessary affordable and deeply affordable housing is, which is why the Green Party has promised to invest $10 billion annually into rent geared to income, as well as co-op and federally funded housing, making sure that federal land is being used to construct and rehabilitate housing for our communities, especially right here in Regent Park. We'll also build where it's needed most in the heart of Toronto Centre, making sure that we are not financializing housing, but making sure that housing isn't for profit, but for the people. That is a big one, because a lot of these housing markets right now are being flipped, and they're taking advantage of our community. So that's a big one as well, but also to rebalance the market and making sure that financial institutions aren't the only ones with all of the housing in their hands. So thank you so much for that question.
All right, thank you so much. So so I'm pretty sure we're all aware, here in Canada, we support and take great pride in our universal public healthcare system. If elected, what will your party do to, 1, prevent provinces from eroding our public health system by diverting funding to private clinics, implementing user fees and extra billing, and 2, to build up the health system so that everyone has access to a family doctor, timely and culturally competent access to health care, and the national pharmacare system is expanded?
Yes, as a family physician right here in Regent Park, as you've heard, I'm very proud to work in our public health system. Our public health system that was actually created thanks to the NDP and Tommy Douglas many decades ago. And it's clear, though, that there are things that are broken. We need to crack down on the privatization of the health system, and the NDP has said we will enforce the Canada Health Act, and that means we will give financial penalties to provinces like Alberta and Ontario where privatization privatization is happening. Carney has said that he will, quote, work with the provinces on this. He has not said he will crack down. It's also clear we need to expand our public health system, and I'm very proud that the NDP pushed the Liberals to implement the Pharmacare Act, but right now it only includes birth control and diabetes medications, and that is clearly not enough. We need it to include all essential medicines. Carney has so far said he does not want to expand it, so that is something the NDP will be pressuring the other parties to do. And we also have a great plan to ensure that every Canadian has a family doctor by 2030. We will train 1,000 new family doctors every year from internationally trained medical graduates who are already living in Canada. Yeah, it's a great plan. And we're also going to increase funding transfers to the provinces by 1%, which again, I've not heard from the other parties.
All right, thank you for the question. So the Green Party promises to ensure that everybody has access to equal and fair health care, to make sure that we stop the erosion of our public health care services, to make sure that we stop the privatization of our public health care services, and to make sure that we have equal access for Indigenous and minority communities to public health care services, because we know that that is a fundamental right, not just a privilege for all Canadians. We would make sure that we have more training and education for our public health care workers, as well as mental health support for our communities. We're also offering free post-secondary education, which would give a promise to hundreds, if not thousands, of healthcare workers that would be of aid to our systems, as well as making sure that our mental health crisis is responded to by mental health care workers and not by policing. So thank you so much.
The healthcare situation is vital, and let me just assure you that the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has said repeatedly he will defend the public healthcare system and the Canadian Health Act. There will be no privatization of it, and we need to protect those services. That is what's at stake in this election. You've seen what the Conservative playbook is. It is going to cut these services. This is the choice, protecting them or not. Protecting programs that we're really proud of. Dental care, which will be expanded in May for millions of more people between the ages of 18 and 64. Expansion, which is a great program. Expansion of the pharmacare system. Look, we're glad that that has support of other parties, but it was the Liberal Party that signed the agreements. The Liberal Party that budgeted, and the Liberal Party that will continue to build on those. The child care program will be built on. And so these are really, really important. But we do need more doctors. So look, there's going to be a $4 billion investment in more healthcare infrastructure, like hospitals. We are going to recruit more doctors. We are going to make sure that any healthcare worker with credentials can work province to province. So we have one economy, not 13, and they're not in silos, so we can do that. We need that kind of mobility and innovation in our healthcare system, but the most important element is we've got to protect it and grow it from threats of cuts.
Thank you. And the final question we have today before we open up the floor is, what is your party's position on the war in Gaza?
First and foremost, I stand for Palestine. I stand for the state of Palestine. And I stand for a ceasefire. I stand to make sure that the Canadian government will cease arming weapons to this war and this genocide, which is what it is. Thank you. The Green Party is in support of a ceasefire, which is incredibly urgent. These are people's lives, and they deserve to have their own land. So the Green Party is in support of finding a solution. We need a solution to this conflict. Unfortunately, it's been going on not only 2 years, but decades, which is a genocide in and of itself. So the Green Party is in support of the ceasefire and to stop arming Israelis when as they're acting out. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, and it's obviously a conversation that we've had at doors knocking on every community, and everybody shares the same feeling. What is happening is horrific, it is tragic, and we need to have an immediate ceasefire. Our position is very principled in this, and it's an attempt to stick to long-standing principles. One, calling for a ceasefire immediately. Two, providing humanitarian aid. Canada has provided $250 million in humanitarian aid, which is the most per capita in the world to the people who are suffering in Gaza. Three, the return of the hostages. And four, we need the people of Palestine and Israel to live in peace and dignity in their own countries, where they can have the safety and dignity that we enjoy in our communities here. And one thing, this is a very divisive issue, and we know this, but I am gratified that the conversations that we can have in our community are passionate and thoughtful, and yet not bringing the division here, but bringing a sharing towards what we all want is a peaceful ceasefire and a solution, and a two-state solution where people can live with dignity and peace.
I mean, this has been a year and a half of genocide streaming to our phones, and I think it's just been awful to witness 50,000 Palestinians murdered, half of them women and children, 1,200 healthcare workers murdered, journalists murdered. This is the largest cohort of child amputees in history. And this is being done with Canadian weapons. We are continuing to send Canadian weapons to Israel, Canadian-made weapons, under previous contracts that have not been canceled. Contracts can be canceled, and contracts must be canceled when they're being used to murder Palestinian children. Of course, we need a ceasefire. We also need to recognize Palestine as a state. We also need to recognize the International Criminal Court rulings and the ICJ rulings. And yes, we need a peace. Of course, we need to work towards peace. We also need to work towards freedom for Palestinians. And freedom for Palestinians may look like a two-state solution. It's hard to say with the illegal settlements happening all over the West Bank and the violence all over the West Bank and Gaza. I don't think that's something we can be calling for right here in Canada. What we need to be calling for is an end to Canadian weapons being used to murder Palestinian children, and freedom for Palestinians. And I'll just say that the humanitarian aid that we've been sending, unfortunately, is being blocked by Israel. So I'm not sure that's really adequate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for answering our questions. So now we'd like to open the floor for questions.
And before we open up the floor, we want to remind everyone of the code of conduct in the room. We are going to limit everyone's questions to 30 seconds each. Then we'll give each candidate a fair time to respond. So we will get started. Yeah, we all.
The question is, Toronto Centre is home to many of the country's largest aid service organizations and likely has the highest proportion of people living in... Sorry. Okay. proportion of people living with HIV in Canada. In 2019, all parties supported recommendations from Parliament's Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights to overhaul HIV criminalization, yet no meaningful action has followed. Canada remains one of the world's highest prosecutors of people living with HIV, even when they pose no risk. The science is clear: undetectable equals untransmittable, a fact affirmed by Health Canada, the Attorney General, the WHO, and the CDC. If elected, will you publicly and actively advocate for the full decriminalization of people with an undetectable viral load? Yes or no? Viral load.
Yes, and look, this needs to change. Obviously, it's something that we would advocate for. I also want to say that we haven't talked a lot about the 2S LGBTQ community here, and it's a very big part of our Toronto Centre community. And again, support for the communities. We have lots of amazing places where people can live in dignity with HIV and AIDS, and we have supported those with our LGBTQ 2S capacity funds and supporting organizations that do that. So the federal government's job is to make sure that every Canadian has access to health care, and every Canadian is not stigmatized by that in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, I agree. I will also advocate for decriminalization, and with the expansion of pharmacare, I think that will also be of great help for people living with HIV/AIDS. That's why we need more than just birth control and diabetes medications. We need all medications, all essential medicines covered in our national pharmacare program. Because I have many patients living with HIV/AIDS who have had to spend lots of money on medications and healthcare, and that's completely unacceptable. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for that very important question. My answer is also yes for the decriminalization. We need a huge supportive healthcare system, which means mental health care as well, because these things don't just affect us physically, but they affect us mentally big time. So we need to make sure that we're here for our community, every single one of our community members, including our two-spirited LGBTQIA+ community. Every single member of that community needs to be accounted for in our public health care system, which is something that the Green Party is working strong for. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll start.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for coming today into the community. Thank you for organizing this today. My question is regarding education system. Like right now, our education system is really poor because of a lot of cuts. And because of the COVID, our kids are behind. And we are facing a lot of disability learning. We're facing a lot of cut for special needs. And kids are struggling, families are struggling. What will you guys do about that? Also recently, as you guys are aware, last year, a lot of Muslims were protesting about the education system. There's Catholic school boards, there's indigenous school boards, and recently they created black schools. Would you guys consider having Muslim schools supported by the government? That's my two questions.
Yeah, I mean, I've been witness to this with 3 children, two of whom are in the school system. I mean, we've seen how deep the cuts have been. by the Ford government here in Ontario. And yes, we need to change governments, I would say. Federally, I mean, the federal government does do a lot to support youth, and of course we need to continue to invest in youth programming, especially after-school programming for youth here in Regent Park and in Toronto Centre. And youth employment is also an area where the federal government needs to step up and ensure that there are opportunities for youth who are in high school and graduating out of the school system. The NDP is proposing a very exciting Youth Climate Corps program that would create jobs for young people out of school, and it would also train them in the new economy, the new green economy, while they're helping us transition to a green economy, doing home retrofits, building electric vehicle infrastructure, building a new east-west-north electricity grid, all these ideas that I'm excited to talk about. So a Youth Climate Corps is an idea that I'm very excited for. And there are other more youth employment opportunities that I think the federal government should step up and support, especially in the face of Trump's tariffs and the trade war. We need to ensure that we're addressing youth unemployment.
Wonderful. The Green Party agrees that education is one of the most important things our country has to offer. When my dad was younger, he came to Canada in search of a better future for me and my brother, as well as the rest of our family, for fair opportunities for education, although it was the most expensive thing he's ever paid for. So the Green Party has vowed for free post-secondary education. This will help further our education levels overall nationally and help support our youth as we inherit this planet. It's incredibly important for us to be educated about how climate change is affecting our planet, as well as educating new healthcare workers and other professions to make sure that we have enough resources for our growing country. We're not only accepting of Muslim communities and education resources, but we also want to provide safety for them as well. We want to make sure that every single one of our children has the opportunity to a safe and supportive education. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. And, as Samantha said, the Ford government's views on this, which is their jurisdiction, has left a lot of schools behind. We understand that. What is the federal government? What can we do? A number of things. First of all, invest heavily in post-secondary training, as we're about to do and we are continuing to do with apprenticeship programs. But also, look, and I remember working here at Pathways to Education here, where kids were going to school and it was either go to school or have some food. And, it was bus fare or lunch. And it's hard to learn when you're hungry. And it's hard to learn when you're unhoused. And this is why our investment in affordable housing, the $25 billion and then another $10 billion on affordable housing to keep people housed, to make sure that their health outcomes and their food are provided, so then they can, when they go to school, they can concentrate and they can graduate, and then they have affordable ways to have training, whether it's an apprenticeship or post-secondary. That's really vital, and it has to be in every single community. And again, we're sitting in a community that has more experience in this than almost any, and this is why Pathways to Education and other programs are so vital, because the connection between our housing, our health, our food insecurity, and our education are linked, and that's why the federal government's programs need to link those.
Thank you. And before we move on to our second question from members in the audience, I want to just remind everyone to keep your questions within 30 seconds, please. And also, please keep your questions to questions and not statements, okay? So we do have time to take a couple of questions. So the next one, Adonis will get the mic.
Go for it. Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Shahan, and I am the president of RPNA and member of Regent Park Tenant Right Association. So thank you, audience, and thank you all the candidates. We have two questions. One is housing related. The current problem is our upper house, lower house transfer issue. But TCEC, they move us from Regent Park to outside. We don't want to move because our kids grow up here. And our mosques, shop, everything around here. And we build this area better place than before. Second question is rent-to-own program. Federally approved. We make a petition to federal government. Our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he approved. And I request whoever going win and going our bring message, bring to House of Commons for rent to own. That's all. And last one for everyone. 1 second, sir.
Don't have time.
Free Palestine.
Okay, we're going to go to a couple more questions and give them a few more time to answer. So we have a question here.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Olivia, Samantha, Evan, I've met two of you. Welcome, Evan. My name is Joanne Warner. I'm here with my mother. We've been here in Regent Park since the 70s. After the blackface theatrics shows in Toronto, Black people were banned from coming into Canada for almost 50 years. So my father was able to come in through my aunt to the domestic scheme, and we landed here. My father worked for the City of Toronto, cleaning the streets of Cabbagetown and Cabbagetown and Regent Park. I now work for the City of Toronto with Ontario Works, and I went into that field thinking that poverty, I'm getting there, I'm getting there. Right, don't worry, I'm getting there. But my voice has been shut down in this community a very long time as a Black person, and I do gotta make that noted, and I know 30 seconds, so thank you, I'm aware of that. So my question is, as a Black person who's been here a very long time, not only has my voice been shut down in this community, even planning this, my voice and another gentleman, our voices have been shut down, but we've also seen politicians' voices like mine have been shut down. And Evan, you did a great interview with Selena Cesar Chauvinez, but we see like Anime Paul, railroaded by her own government. Selena Chauvinez, all railroaded. So what are we going to do to deal with anti-Black racism, not only in politics, but in our own community? Because we're suffering with gun violence, poverty, housing, we're in tents, we're in jails, and our voices will be heard, 30 seconds or not.
Thank you, first of all, for saying that. And it's such an important issue for every community. Your community especially has faced this institutionalized and systemic racism for years. We know it. We talked about it right off at the first question, which is absolutely vital. Part of the answer here, outside of the fact that it is totally unacceptable, and we have to stand against it and stand together against it and speak it, but we've got to have action. And again, this is why, from a federal government point of view, we have to invest in things that change the system. So we talked about, for example, investing in programs to make sure that Black and other minority communities are not overrepresented in our criminal justice system, because that is the very manifestation of the systemic racism that you've just talked about. Also in our political voice. Look, I am here. Marcy Ian stepped down. Marcy's a friend of mine. She wants to take care of her kids, and she served incredibly, incredibly well. Those voices matter. She was at my launch and expressing the voice and asking and knowing that that work will be continued. So we need to continue that work. We will continue that work, and listening to your voice is absolutely vital. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, for the question. Yes, we have talked about it, and it's so important that it's great that we're talking about it again. We need to address anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism, and like Evan said, we need to take action. It's not all words, and I'm not sure I've seen action from the current government. And so we need to be investing in initiatives like banning carding from the RCMP, because that is under the federal jurisdiction, so that is something that is under the control of the government, and banning, racial profiling, because that will go a long way to addressing the disproportionate number of Black people in our prisons and jails. I did want to address your question about gun violence, because that has been an issue in particular in the Regent Park community. And I had the opportunity to attend a press conference last week put on by a number of groups, including Mothers for Peace, which is based out of Regent Park. And I heard about the impact of gun violence on families here in our community. And it's devastating and long-lasting. And so we need to implement gun control. And there was legislation that was introduced to ban handguns and assault rifles, but it hasn't really been implemented. We need funding to implement the buyback program, and we actually need to implement this ban on weapons. We also need to crack down on the illegal American weapons that are sneaking in through the border, because actually half of gun violence committed in Canada is committed with illegal American weapons. So that's something the NDP will do, is increase border patrol to crack down on those illegal weapons.
Perfect. Thank you, Joanne. Welcome, Joanne and your family, and thank you so much for posing that question. I hear you, I see you, and I take it into account. My dad grew up in Oshawa as a Black man in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That wasn't easy for him. He became a police officer. He worked really, really hard to make sure that Black people were represented in his community, and he was given the cold shoulder. He was given every other heartache to go through, and he's taught me that you do not step down. You don't stand down to violence. You don't stand down to mistreatment, and you stand up for your people and for what you believe in. This is why I got into politics. I'm passionate about helping our communities, every single one of us, women, children, Black people, Indigenous people. I am very, very, very inspired by this community, and I will not step down or stand down with this mistreatment. The Green Party is pushing for reform in policing, as well as surveillance systems that too often ignore threats to Black and Indigenous leaders while they're disproportionately targeting them. So we promise to make sure that we're advocating for our Black communities and making sure that we're not only listening to them, but making sure we are spotlighting their voices. They're the ones that need to speak with this issue, and they're the ones that we need to listen to. Thank you.
Okay, here's the next question over here. Next question. Ali, we're coming over here. We'll get to you, Ali.
Okay, so thank you very much. So my question is, do you have any plan to fund social services, create jobs, and to raise the minimum wage? Thank you.
Is it me? Oh. Sorry. Okay. So the NDP has I'll start by saying, yes, I mean, we've seen that the affordability crisis is the top of mind for people, along with the housing crisis in our community. And so, yes, we need to fund social services, and we also need to make sure that people are able to afford the cost of living. So the NDP will, first of all, permanently cut the GST from essentials, things like your phone bill, your internet bill. We shouldn't be paying GST on those things. We will also cut taxes for low and middle income earners. So anyone earning less than $129,000 a year will see a tax cut up to $1,000 back in your pockets. Yeah, I think it's great. We also have a very exciting idea that we've taken from France to cap the price of grocery essentials. It's actually worked there for the last several years, where the government has negotiated price maximums with manufacturers for things like fruits and vegetables, bread, eggs, probably butter because it's France. And this is something we will push to implement here because grocery prices have gone crazy, and it's not all inflation. There is evidence of price gouging. So, I think this will go a long way to make sure that people are actually able to buy food for their families. And the affordability crisis is obviously top of mind along with the threat of Donald Trump and the trade war, which unfortunately is likely to make things worse. And I'll just finish off by saying that because of the trade war, we have sorry, never mind. I will address it later.
Okay, thank you so much. The Green Party is very devoted to funding into our social services, as well as ensuring a livable wage for our employees, everybody working, especially with employment insurance. We know that that's a topic of issue. We know that a lot of people are left out of the employment insurance, like gig workers. So we're making sure that we allow access to that resource for a lot more people in our nation, as well as cutting the taxes for a lot of low and middle income people. So the Green Party is offering no federal tax on the first $40,000 that you report annually, which could really, really make a huge difference for a lot of families in our communities who have to choose between housing and groceries, which is not a choice that you should ever have to make. That's something that you should never have to choose between putting a roof over your head or feeding yourself. So that's something that the Green Party takes into account and is really devoted to changing. Thank you so much.
So this is really the crux of the election here, which is how do we protect our social services and invest in them if Donald Trump is trying to destroy our economy. And we, as the Prime Minister likes to say, we can't distribute what we don't have. Our first task is let's fight Donald Trump and his tariffs. So remember, our counter tariffs that we've already launched against the United States after the 25% tariffs and against our auto workers and our steel workers, and others are coming, all that money will go to help workers. Number one. Number two, of course, people need more money in their pockets. That's why already we've given a middle-class tax cut, so the average two-income family will have a tax cut, will save about $825. But you've got to protect the economy in order to invest. So in the plan, and please go online and read the plan, we're investing billions of dollars in our healthcare system, in affordable housing. But we can do that only because A, it's costed, but B, you can't do it unless you protect this economy from not just Donald Trump, but the cuts that Pierre Poilievre wants to make. They're not here today, no surprise. But read their plan. What's at stake is a deep series of cuts to those very social services you're asking about. And this election is a choice, and the choice is critical.
Hi, folks. My name is Shiva. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying I lived in Winnipeg before this, and it's really funny that Evan called himself racialized when Ben Carr called himself the face of reconciliation, then privatized the RCMP, and we see how that turns out for the Wet'suwet'en and the Gitxsan in the Yintah. Anyway, my question. So Evan has written about banking deregulation, environmental deregulation in Canada to mimic what Trump and Poilievre have said for G0. So I'm wondering, how does banking deregulation that impacts Canadian households like myself by reducing the insurance coverage for bankers as well as introducing innovative financial instruments, as Evan had called them, which led to the 2008 crash, make our economy stronger. And secondly, as a material scientist, sorry, I'm just going to finish this question off really quickly. As a material scientist, I know that carbon sequestering isn't real. I know that carbon capture doesn't exist. It won't exist for at least another century, as far as we know, to make it commercially viable. So how does Mr. Carney's proposal to use carbon capture to reduce the environmental impact that Canada has created as the largest polluter per capita, how is that going to be addressed without carbon capture existing?
Okay. I think we met. I think I knocked on your door, and yes, we had a good conversation. So good to see you again. You told me you were going to be here, and you're good to your word. So great to see you again, which is great. I don't know really. I don't think I've ever called for deregulation of the banks, but you can point out the article. I honestly, I don't think I've written about calling for deregulation of our banks at all. In fact, I've written actually about how we have a significantly more stable banking system here in Canada as opposed to the United States. But and I do think nobody understands us better than Mark Carney as the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and keeping a stable, regulated banking system helped us through the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And I think that we're really proud of that record. And Canada got through that. And that doesn't mean that that didn't cost a lot of people. And it was a difficult time. Just on the carbon capture, look, carbon capture and storage is simply one element here, and certainly not the main one. One of the most important things is intensity. Intensity emissions. Okay, listen, I'm happy to have the conversation. It's just one element. But as part of the climate plan, Mark Carney has kept the intensity emissions on big industry, which are the largest emitters, and he's talked about that, keeping that, because that is critical to keeping our greenhouse gas emissions low.
I mean, look, Mark Carney has talked about building a new pipeline. He is not serious about tackling the climate crisis. The NDP will cut the $18 billion annually in government handouts to fossil fuel companies, and we'll reinvest that in home retrofits for millions of Canadians. And for millions of Canadians, those will be free home retrofits, because, carbon capture is an unproven technology that does not work. It actually leads to more investment in fossil fuels, which is the opposite of what we need right now. We need to be investing in renewables instead. And carbon capture, when it's used, even though it doesn't work, it also increases air pollution, because there's more air pollution created from the energy used to actually utilize carbon capture and storage. So we absolutely need to be instead investing in wind and solar projects, and the NDP will work with the provinces and Indigenous communities to build a new east-west-north electricity grid, connecting the provinces with new renewable energy. And I love the fact that right now 1/5 of renewable energy projects in Canada are run by Indigenous communities, and we're going to increase that, and so that's working towards both decolonization and decarbonization. I just love that this is where our economy is going. Our economy is not going to more pipelines, more oil and gas. We absolutely need to be investing in renewables instead.
I'd also like to highlight how important of an issue this is with the Green Party. They've always been the steward for renewable energy, for environmental science, and for combating climate change. We would be ending the billions of dollars in fossil fuel subsidies and redirecting that money to clean energy and public services. We will be looking towards a 100% renewable energy future by transitioning to 100% 100% renewable energy by 2030. That is one of our promises as the Green Party, to electrify public transportation and invest in zero-emission transit, creating thousands of local green jobs, but also supporting community-owned energy products and including those led by Indigenous nations. We would also have a just transition for workers and communities. We'd have income support, retraining, and job placement for workers transitioning out of the fossil fuel sector to make sure that they are also supported and fast-tracked into our renewable energy sector, and to have accountability and action. The Green Party will not keep delaying these actions for years and years and years. They're going to take action right now because this is something that we have personally been fighting for decades and have seen nothing come of it. So thank you so much.
Okay, and before we get into a couple other questions, we want to make sure that we answer as many of you all as possible. And because there is so many questions, we just want to say that the answers should now be cut to 1 minute each. So instead of 1 minute and 50 seconds, let's do a minute each, okay? And then we'll go back to the questions. Thank you.
And we have a question from the chat.
The question is, I would like to know what the candidates will do to manage the use of rapidly advancing AI technologies in the context of surveillance and remote targeting of individuals, including voice-to-skull technology. I understand it is known that this may contribute to certain uncontrolled cases of violence, such as gun sprees. How will this information be made available to the public to allow education, awareness, and better prevention? And how will the privacy of the individual and protected in an era of mind-reading technology which are now in existence?
Okay, thank you for that question. I personally believe that the fight against AI is also a fight for our environment and for our community. Thank you. AI is a huge, huge use of energy. It's also polluting our systems globally, but also electronically. It can be unethical to use, especially in terms of surveillance and over-surveillance, as well as the use of policing and unjust imprisonment. It can be used for a lot of things that haven't been corroborated lately, and this is something that the Green Party is trying to fight against, the use of AI for false imprisonment of our minority communities and over surveillance of our systems. Thank you.
Look, it's a great question. AI is going to come with great opportunities and great risks. We have to invest in those opportunities in order to not get left behind. We have some of the pioneering AI institutes here in Toronto. Many of our students going to school will work in that industry in Montreal, and we'll invest to make sure that Canada has a place at the table in developing AI. But we've got to do it responsibly. Regulating AI is the singular most difficult technological challenge that we have. This is a government that has battled the big tech giants like Meta here, so we have safe access to facts and news. This is why we're investing another $150 million in the CBC, because we need Canadian information, fact-based information. But we also have to make sure that our privacy commissioner has teeth to make sure that your information is not being used against you and protecting privacy. But it's not an either-or with AI, it's both.
Yes, AI is an amazing, AI is a word that is used for all kinds of technologies, we should say, and there's not one definition of AI. And like Olivia said, it's also a huge energy sink and is leading to huge amounts of fossil fuel use, climate pollution, and air pollution. So it's something we need to be wary of. I mean, I've actually seen the way that a specific AI computer server hub is polluting an indigenous community in Akwesasne currently. So it's definitely something we need to monitor. And you're right, like we've seen good uses of it. We've also seen Brookfield, Mark Carney's former company, using AI to jack up rents for Canadians, for people living in Toronto. So, I mean, I guess ultimately I do agree with Evan that it's something we need to be careful about and monitor, and we'll see where technology leads us, but we need to enforce regulations.
Okay, thank you. Hi. Here in Toronto Centre, we have previously suffered from having our MP and former Finance Minister Bill Morneau resign after breaching conflict of interest rules by not recusing himself when the government awarded a contract to a charity he had close ties to. How can we trust that our candidates here, specifically I'm concerned about Evan Soloman, if he's elected, he wouldn't put us in a similar position when he was previously fired from CBC for a major violation in journalistic ethics and professionalism when he was taking secret commission payments related to art sales involving people he dealt with as a host. In at least one case, he took commissions in excess of $300,000 for several pieces of art and did not disclose to the buyer that he was being paid fees for introducing the buyer and the seller. So how can we trust that we won't be in this kind of position again in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I'm not going to dispute some of the facts, but I will say, look, I took accountability for all of that 10 years ago. I'm really proud of the work that I did at CTV that you probably saw it on Power Play or on Question Period or hosting my radio show here on Newstalk 1010, or whether I was working at G0. So I'm really proud of the work that I did. And I think putting ourselves forward to like this is part of what this is all about. Being accountable, talking to people, and letting your work stand up for itself. And that's the most important thing. For me, I'm just very, very proud of the work that I have done in the last decade and continue to do. And I really think that what people want right now is, how are we going to face the challenges of the future in this community? And this is the choice this is about today. Who can face those challenges?
Okay, let's have time for the next candidates, folks.
I agree that these are the challenges we face. As a candidate who lives and works in this community, I've worked here for over a decade, I'm raising my children here, I am the candidate who can take this on. I am the candidate who can truly represent this community, be present for this community, be responsive to the needs of this community. I am the candidate who, sees patients here, who has heard so many stories of what people are going through here in our community, and so I've heard that we need more affordable housing. I've heard that we need to address the affordability crisis. I've heard that we need to address climate change. And so I am that candidate who can really face these challenges and go to Parliament and represent Toronto Centre in Parliament. I can be the voice for this community, really reminding the other parties of what we need here, things like affordable housing. Because I've been here for the last decade or more.
Thank you for your question and your statement. Appreciated. I know that I am green when it comes to politics, but also when it comes to my experience. I'm young, but that doesn't mean that I'm not up for the task. I have nothing to hide and I have nothing to lose. I will fight for you. I have a very, very hard-headed attitude, and I'm someone who doesn't back down. A little bit stubborn, some may say, but I'm here to fight for the values that matter for our communities. I live in this community. Affordable housing affects me personally. I live in a co-op. I've lived in a co-op my entire time in Toronto. It is honestly the only way that I can stay in the city, and I know that a lot of people can speak the same, and I really need to I really need to fuel my passions to speaking for my community and making sure that we have a voice in Parliament. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question submitted from someone by the audience. So, as we all know, Canada is always being a country to welcome immigrants. Due to the current systems, there are a lot of gaps and loopholes from which crooks get advantage of immigrants and newcomers. What are the strategies and principles to protect newcomers and immigrants from predatory actors? Samantha?
Yes, we are a country that has been proud to welcome immigrants and refugees, and that's a core part of our identity as Canadians, and it's something we need to protect under threat from Donald Trump. And so we need to continue to welcome new immigrants and new refugees, and we need to support them on their arrival. You know, over the last several years, there have been cuts to the number of immigrants who've been allowed to stay in Canada. So their student visas have expired, temporary foreign worker visas have expired, and unfortunately that means that many have been, by all accounts, deported, and that's not something that I would support. We need to welcome new members of our community, and it's a virtuous cycle because new members of our community are workers and can help us address things like the housing crisis. And the federal government needs to step up and ensure that new immigrants are supported, and that means providing housing. It also means providing shelter. I work in a women's shelter, and right now there is not enough capacity for all the refugees and newcomers who are arriving.
Thank you for the question. As a daughter of an immigrant, I know how pressing this matter can be. As a first-generation Canadian on my father's side, I've seen this process and how important it is to build our communities. My father helped build his community from the ground up, so I see firsthand that immigrants help us build our country from the ground up, especially. When it comes to safety, we need to make sure we're building healthy and equitable communities where everyone has access to the resources they need to survive and thrive, which includes what Samantha was saying about a lot of our refugees ending up in unhoused shelters. But we also need to make sure we're keeping everybody in the community safe by adding mental health and addiction services and resources, and making sure that mental health issues aren't being responded to by the police and by arrests, but by mental health care workers. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. Immigration is the lifeblood of our country and the lifeblood of this community. And we need to do what Samantha said, very important. We've got to make sure we're housing people, whether they're coming immigration or the refugee system. I will advocate for the interim housing assistance program to be continued for refugees. Very, very important for the city. But the immigration levels are tied to housing, and we have a housing crisis, and we all know that. And so calibrating that to make sure that we've got the affordable and deeply affordable housing, to make sure that everyone has access to housing, and making sure that that's tied with our immigration so we see the benefits. And finally, you asked about safety, and it's really important. Again, we are investing in more border guards to make sure that we have safety and drugs and illegal guns are not crossing our border. Absolutely critical. We want people to come across, not drugs and guns.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Thank you so much. Everybody's been thanked, so I'll keep it quick. Quick yes or no questions for the candidates. Have you lived in Toronto Centre for at least the past 2 years? And this second one, the last one, is very close to my heart because I work in education and our free speech is being attacked. Do you believe that the criticism of the government of Israel is not anti-Semitism? Government of Israel.
The first question, yes, I've lived in Toronto for the past 5 years. I've lived in Cabbagetown, lovely community. It really is my home right now. It means a lot to me. And for the second question, I don't believe that that asking for ceasefire is anti-Semitic. I don't believe that asking for a free Palestine, for a habitable state, for the for halting the genocide, I don't believe that that is anti-Semitism. Thank you.
As you know, my work, when I was born and raised in Toronto, but my work took me to Ottawa and for 2 years to New York. I'm really delighted to be back. My wife's in the back. If you know a good place, she's looking for a place in the community with us. Our kids go to school at McGill right now. And your second question on, of course it's not. Look, even if you went to Israel, there is a robust criticism of government policies. There's protests. What we want is a democracy where, of course, we can disagree and criticize, but we want to do it without making another community feel unsafe. And that's the most important thing. Of course, express yourselves. That's a freedom, and we are the party of the charter. But we can't make other communities either feel intimidated or unsafe. And that's just part of the reasonable limits that we have on free speech here, and that's been part of Canada since the charter and before.
Yes, I've lived in the Moss Park community for 6 years, I think, and worked in Toronto Centre for 11. Of course, criticism of Israel is welcome right now, I would say. I'm against the International Holocaust Remembrance Association's definition, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. It does not make sense. We must be able to criticize Israel. We must criticize Israel. I would also add that I disagree with Evan. I think it's fine to make another community uncomfortable. Obviously, hate speech, you know, I'm a Jewish person. I am against true anti-Semitism, and there is true anti-Semitism out there. You know, I think some Jewish people feel uncomfortable with the criticism of Israel, and that's fine. That's okay.
Okay, next question.
Regent Park. Everyone's out here. I see some friends from Moss Park. Hi, Nemo. I'm going to ask a question. So the other hat I wear, my friends, is I'm the co-chair of the Build Ontario Line Differently, which stands for BOLD. And in 2021, the federal government announced that it was contributing over $10 billion to transit infrastructure projects in Toronto, including the Ontario Line. The funding announcement indicated that several conditions needed to be met to access the funding, including job opportunities for local communities, community benefit agreements, the construction of affordable housing, and there's only one definition of affordable housing. There's no such thing as it's based on income, and noise mitigation programs. We need more transit in our city, but these conditions ensure that we are getting the most out of our infrastructure dollars. So how will you ensure, this is a very important question, how will you ensure that these funding conditions are being met to create good jobs in our community, like in Moss Park, where they're building the Moss Park subway station? Thank you.
First of all, Waleed, thank you. He's done incredible work in the community. And I've been around with Waleed, seeing that work in action. Look, first of all, the federal government's job as a third funder of the Ontario line is absolutely vital. We need to fund infrastructure. We need to do it with the province and municipalities, and we're doing it. But as we've said about our Build Canada Fund, strings have to be attached. And those strings have to be attached to make sure that there are affordable housing being built on those infrastructure lines. Look, once you build a line, that's when the developers come in, and that's where you need to make sure that there's affordable housing, RGI that we've talked about. And finally, there's got to be youth programs, investing in summer job programs. These are absolutely critical. We know how many low-income kids can fall behind in the summers because they need activity, and the federal government has been investing in those school jobs and will continue to do so.
It unfortunately took the government, the current Liberal government, many years to invest money in Line 2 subway trains. So I'm glad to see that the federal government is stepping up for the Ontario line. We also at the NDP are proud to promise investment in funding to actually operate mass transit, because this is the future. We need to invest in more mass transit. We also plan to build more electric vehicles here in Canada, electric school buses, for example, and other electric buses. And this is something that will create jobs right here in Toronto Centre. I'll just finally say that, yes, youth employment opportunities are so important, especially in our community, and that's why I mentioned earlier the Youth Climate Corps. This would be an example of a place where people enrolled in the, or youth enrolled in the Youth Climate Corps could learn new skills and get a new job.
So thank you for your question. It's great to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. So some things that the Green Party promises to do to overcome the employment issues here is to provide access to free post-secondary education, which can really change the world for thousands of young people entering the workforce. They would be able to get their training, get their education fairly and equally, and be able to enter that job market as soon as possible and be given that opportunity that a lot of people have just based on their income. Another thing is to reform employment insurance. We understand that things happen, but to make sure that these resources are available for everybody who has lost their job, for everybody who's going through a hard time with employment right now. Gig workers aren't exactly included in these resources, so we do promise to open it up for them. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Thank you. It's actually another transit-related question. So 2 months ago, the previous federal government finally announced the much-anticipated Toronto-Quebec City high-speed rail. As one of the largest infrastructure projects in Canadian history, it would take years and billions of dollars to build. I probably wouldn't be able to to ride on it before I retire. But anyways, it's going to revolutionize intercity travel for over 10 million people along the route by providing a better alternative to cars and highways. So my question is, what is your position and your party's position on committing to and facilitate such project? And what impacts do you envision that the high-speed rail project is going to have for downtown Toronto residents and Canada in general in the coming years? Thank you.
I'm so excited that that project was finally announced, and yeah, we need to break ground on it immediately. The NDP has a plan to build a high-speed rail line across the country, starting with the Windsor-Quebec City corridor, a corridor in British Columbia as well, but we need that across the country. And I think it's a bit unfortunate that it's a public-private partnership. This is something that we need public control over, and we need public investment in to really tackle the climate crisis. And it's something that will create jobs, and right now, in the face of Donald Trump and the economic threats, we need to be investing in green jobs in our country. And as Olivia has mentioned several times, we do need to be training, fossil fuel workers in the green economy, and this is a great opportunity. Build that high-speed railway railway now and quickly. And yeah, let's get that done.
Thank you for your question. I also agree with what Samantha is saying. This is an incredible opportunity for everybody nationally as a community to get together and get this project finished. And we're very excited to be able to transition our public transit into renewable energy and making sure that they're running on electric power, making sure that our workers are transitioned from fossil fuel energies into electric and renewable resources so that we can uphold these projects and make sure that they're on the right track. Thank you.
It's a great question, and the answer is yes, yes, yes. We need high-speed rail. We need that corridor. We need this kind of infrastructure. You heard Mark Carney already say that this will be one of the core big infrastructure investments that the federal government needs to be a major part of. Otherwise, it will never get done. The premiers are on side on this. But this is the beginning of more than just that kind of infrastructure. We need, Samantha talked about it, the Liberals have talked about it, the West-East energy grid, that's really, really important. That's also part of the platform. But we need, and we have a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure capacity fund. We need better ports. We need better high-speed rail. Because of the new threat environment, because Donald Trump wants to take our country and our economy, we need to do what we've tried to do for generations, turn 13 economies into one, break down interprovincial barriers, and build high-speed rail. Great question.
Okay, folks, we're running out of time, and there's lots of questions. So I'm going to take the 3 last questions that I have, and but we're going to do it all at once. So please, candidates, keep track. You still got the 1 minute. You still got the 1 minute. So I'll go first here.
Hi, my name's Barbara Hall, and I've lived in this community for 60 years. I'm old. I wake up terrified hearing what's happening to the south of us. And I'm also terrified that Pierre Poilievre is Trump light. He's moving towards getting rid of DEI in our country, of wrecking the rule of law. You know the list of things, as well as destroying our economy. What will your party do to keep Pierre Poilievre from being the next Prime Minister of Canada?
Okay, hold your answer, remember that.
Hi, thank you. I'll make this quick. The situation in Gaza right now, as we speak, is in fact a genocide. That is basically the unanimous opinion of all experts on the subject around the world. Evan, why are you, like Mark Carney, refusing to name it as such? You are the only one who did not use that word during the opening statements. And second, Canada is signatory to the International Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. It is obligated to actually act under international law to stop what is happening. So for everybody, what do you see as the concrete actions Canada must take in order to stop and in turn punish this crime against humanity?
One more.
Hi, my name is Marlene DeGeneva. I'm going back to renewable energy, a question. I think these other 2 questions were really important. I'm not sure that the feds can do anything about this, but in the event that it's possible. We have programs that are brought in with, that the parties brag about. And they sound wonderful. And I'll give you an example. My son has put, I know. My son has put, what do you call these things on your roof? solar energy. It was an absolute no-brainer. It was easy to do. It saves him a ton of money. He is now, within a month, he was selling fuel back to or electricity back to the city. If people in the city could do these things, and if we could do them on buildings as well, we would save so much in fossil fuels and so forth. The problem being this: when you actually try to do it, it costs so much money to begin with that it really only helps people who can afford it. $40,000, $50,000 you have to lay down up front. When will these programs be something that the rest of us can do and affect renewable energy on our own?
So there's 3 questions. Let's see how they answer, and then if there's time, I got 2 more people. Okay? Only if there's time. Go for it.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to go in reverse order here and answer the last question first. So when it comes to our renewable energy resources, the Green Party has promised to transition to 100% renewable resources by 2030, and we can get this done by making sure that our renewable resources are actually affordable for people and that people are actually making a livable wage. That is incredibly important, making sure that we're offering our free post-secondary education to make up for that gap. As well, thank you for your question up here in the front row. We need a ceasefire immediately. I know we called for one, but there hasn't been one. We continue to see the war and the genocide continue, and I call for that. I also call for the Canadian government to stop sending and arming Israel during that genocide. And then the first question, I'm trying to remember, was about Trump. I tried. That's okay.
Me? Okay, I'll go in kind of reverse order here. On renewable energy, there's lots of programs on home retrofits that's really, really important. But look, we are in a crisis right now, in an economic crisis because of Trump. So we are going to have to, again, triple down on our renewable energy. But we're also going to have to make sure that we get our critical minerals and all our resources to use, because Canadians need that, as we are still the leaders in greenhouse gas emission reductions here in Canada and keep those intensity emissions. On Gaza, look, you asked what concrete action, and this is a horrific situation. We have called for a ceasefire. Actions matter here. $250 million in humanitarian aid. These are the foundational principles, the call for the hostages to be returned, and most importantly, for the people of Palestine and Israel to live in peace after this ceasefire. And that's what we have to work towards. And I'll just get to Barb Hall on Donald Trump. Look, the most important issue is you're right, stopping Trump. Just give me a sec, because I got, and the choice between Pierre Poilievre and we have to stop Pierre Poilievre. That's what this election's about.
It's a crime.
Okay, folks. We're here to hear the candidates. We're here to hear the candidates, please. We're here to hear the candidates.
My turn.
Samantha has a turn.
Wait. All right, so I'm going to address 2 questions in one, Trump and renewable energy. So in the face of Trump, the NDP is the only party really talking about protecting everyday Canadians, really protecting people from the threat of Trump. And we are going to do that by creating jobs in renewable energy infrastructure. I think it's very exciting. We are going to build a new east, west, and north electricity grid, connecting the provinces, including with the territories, and creating jobs in the face of Trump. Trump. We're going to use also our counter-tariff revenue to fix EI. The NDP also has a plan, like the Green Party, to expand EI eligibility to part-time workers, to gig workers, expand the duration to 50 weeks, expand the amounts per week, and this will also protect Canadians from the threat of Trump and the economic effects of Trump's tariffs. And I guess that's good enough. My 5 seconds left. Thank you.
Last question, folks. And we're giving 30 seconds to answer.
My question is very quick to Evan. Can you all hear me? I know that Evan, you don't live in Toronto Centre. Toronto Centre is a very unique community, and the knowledge about the community and the fabric of the society is really a key for any leader who will take leadership in this community. So how do you see yourself qualifying when you actually don't know much about the Toronto Centre and you never lived in Toronto Centre? And the second part of my question, I'm not done with the 30 seconds yet. In your action plan that you earlier mentioned and the list you mentioned around the issue of Gaza, which is not a conflict and it's not an issue, it's a 77 years of all horrific things, of people being oppressed. What do you think the Liberal government will do to educate themselves better about that crisis and learn better about it? It's not a year and a half ago, it's a 77 years ago. I would like to know what you have in mind in these two parts.
Okay. Thanks for the question. Look, I was born and raised in Toronto. My family's here, my brother's here, my sister's here, my cousins are here, my wife's family's from here. I've worked here at Pathways. I understand. This is my home, and I know the communities well, and I'm very proud to be here. Again, let me just go back to the and let me just again return. I think we should be very proud of the principled stance that the Canadian government has taken. I know my time's up, and the question.
I'm sorry. It is. I'm 30
Come on.
for everybody.
I get like male privilege, but because I'm not right.
Okay, so.
That is right. That's exactly what this is.
Okay.
We're just quick, really quick. We gotta go. It's gotta be speed talking here.
You haven't cut him off.
I mean, I agree. I'm someone who has lived and worked here. I know the community very well. Some of my patients are here, and that's such a privilege. And I'm still learning. Of course, I'm still learning. I've learned so much while canvassing, door knocking throughout the community. But I agree that it takes time to really know a community, to be able to represent a community, to understand what the issues are. And I think I've at least built those relationships over the last many years.
Perfect. Thank you for your question. I'd like to say as well, I've lived in this community, I've walked the streets, I've taken the buses, and I've unfortunately been able to experience firsthand the mistreatment when it comes to mental health, when it comes to policing, when it comes to inadequate health care, and I want to speak up for that. I want to say from my experience, this isn't enough. What's been going on has not been enough, and we deserve a lot better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all so much, residents, for all of your questions for our candidates here today. That officially ends our open question period. We now want to give the floor back to our candidates for their closing remarks. So before we end off the night, we are going to start with Olivia for her closing remarks.
All right, I just want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you who have come by, shown your support, been able to ask your questions. We appreciate it so much. The only way that we can get better as leaders is by making sure that we're listening and that we're supporting our community. So thank you, thank you. Just one last thing to say about myself as a candidate. As an environmental scientist, as a Black female, I've gone through a lot of struggles in life. I've seen firsthand the the amount of inadequate resources that this city has, not only this city, but this nation. I've lived in a couple cities, I've traveled through Canada, and it's not getting better under the Liberal government, and it hasn't gotten better. It's been slightly getting worse every single year. As a young person, I care about the future of our planet. I care about the future of our community. I care about the future of everybody here, and I want to be able to fight for that fair future, to fight for equality, to fight for your justice, and to fight for yourselves. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to show you that I can fight for you.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to the organizers. Thanks to all of you. This is the kind of democratic exercise that is so vital. Robust questions from people, unscripted. I really appreciate it. We are now in the most pivotal election of our lifetime. Not just because Donald Trump wants to take our country, but destroy our economy, destroy the businesses in this community, destroy our ability to fund the very programs that are the lifeblood of Toronto Centre. This is a choice. It's not just Donald Trump. As Barb Hall said, it is about what Pierre Poilievre. It is a choice. In this election, if Mr. Poilievre wins, and you've seen his plan, there will be deep cuts to our services and an open door to what Donald Trump wants to do. There is only one clear way to fight this, and that is on Team Carney, to fight Donald Trump, to protect our fundamental programs, dental care, pharmacare, child care, our public health, affordable housing, and build a better future together. We have a new leader. We have a new team. We have looked to a bright future, but we need to do it together with an affordable future that's inclusive to everyone. I really hope that I can count on your support on April 28th, but it has just been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be up here with great candidates in a fantastic community. Thank you, everybody.
I also have to say my thank yous to the organizers and my fellow candidates, and of course to the audience. Thank you for coming and for lasting so long. As you heard, am a member of this community, a physician who's worked with members of this community. I live here, I'm raising my children here, and I will be an excellent representative of Toronto Centre. You know, I will be fighting for the things that our community needs, things like affordable housing, things like the dental care program, which the NDP forced the Liberals to implement, like the pharmacare program, which the NDP forced the Liberals to implement, like, you know, affordable daycare, which again was an NDP idea. And, you know, this is a theme because many of the programs that you can think of that support people in our community were NDP ideas. EI, that was an NDP idea. Old age security, you know, our very healthcare system was an NDP idea which was fought for from opposition. So, you know, I think we need strong NDP MPs in caucus, really pushing the other parties, especially under a Mark Carney Liberal leadership. We need to force the other parties to get these things done. And that's why I'm running to truly represent this community and fight for what we need in Ottawa. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We want to thank you all so much for coming to Toronto Centre's all candidates meeting. We appreciate you all coming out. Huge shout out to Evan, Samatha, and Olivia for taking the time today and addressing the community's needs. We appreciate everyone coming out. Have a good one. Take care. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit us on all our social media platforms. Please visit our website for more information.